You're tuning into the Journey to Your Best Self podcast, where we explore the past holistic well-being, personal growth, and living a fulfilling life. Each episode, we bring you insightful conversations, practical tools, and inspiring stories to help you integrate your mind, body, and spirit on your journey to becoming your best self. Let's dive in and embark on this journey together. And welcome back to the Journey to Your Best Self podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian O'Neill. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host and sister, clinical hypnotherapist, certified life coach, and yoga instructor, Tara O'Neill. Today, we're extremely excited to learn a lot and spread a lot of information to our listeners and viewers, to be joined by Lauren Fonvielle, an integrative energy practitioner specializing in EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique for those not in the know, as well as tapping to relieve stress, anxiety, and trauma. All topics that we do delve into on here, and we're really hoping to get a lot of great information out to you listening today. Laura hopefully will be able to guide us through some of these powerful practices which will help you release emotional and physical blockage, bringing healthy healing and balance into your life. So let's dive into some actionable steps so you can start using EFT, hopefully in your daily routine, learn some more about Lauren, connect with her, and feel more grounded and empowered. So without any further ado, Lauren, welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me today. I'm happy to be here.
How are you today?
I'm doing well.
I hope that's not too much of a responsibility there. Teach everyone tuning in about what you've been studying, researching, and learning about for so long. Perhaps before we get started and to relay to people what we already know about your intimate knowledge about this, could you give us a little background on why you decided to pursue EFT? Tapping and things like that? Was it a pivotal moment, a turning point, or was there always an interest in these things that you had?
Yeah, I came to this work because of my own journey with anxiety and stress and really trying to find a holistic way of managing it. I started having some panic attacks and I wanted to figure out a natural way of dealing with it. And that led me on this pretty wild journey of becoming a yoga teacher, really getting into meditation. I do sound healing and play crystal alchemy singing bowls. I dived into coaching groups, and then eventually I was introduced to tapping, and it really made a big difference in my life. And it's one of my favorite modalities, and I just kept practicing it myself and eventually went on to get certified so that I could share it with other people. And I recently just became a trainer, so now I can train other people in becoming EFT practitioners. So it's been a journey. I never would have thought that this is where it would lead, but I'm really grateful that I'm here.
Excellent. Very hopeful message. Was there someone or something, a mentor or somebody that started you or turned you down into this world?
It was I was in a group coaching program, and that coach was on maternity leave, and she had invited in a variety of different people to come and speak with us during that time, and one of those people was a tapping practitioner, and I was definitely intrigued by the idea, but I was very skeptical that tapping on myself was going to help me feel less anxious and less overwhelmed. And then I experienced it, and I couldn't deny the changes that I felt in my body, and that was really all it took for me to continue with it and continue to explore it.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Lauren, for being on the show, for doing this work that is definitely helping other people. I completely agree. You can't deny after you have a tapping session, you can't deny the immediate physiological experience that is happening. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what it entails and what it might look like for those that can't visually see us? Because there are some motions, meridians. I'm not sure if you call them meridians that we're tapping. However you'd like to explain it.
Yeah. So EFT is also interchangeably referred to as tapping, and it is this process of gently tapping on certain points of the body. And the points that we are tapping on are the end points of the meridians, as you mentioned. And the idea is that we're tapping on these points while we are simultaneously acknowledging the emotions that we're feeling. And doing this practice really helps you to hold space for your emotions. And a lot of the time, as human beings, we don't like feeling uncomfortable feelings. We don't like feeling angry, sad, frustrated, overwhelmed. We try to do all sorts of things to avoid that. We, as I call it, stuff it down, and then we distract ourselves with something else. Sometimes it's distracting yourself by throwing yourself into your work, or throwing yourself into doing things with the kids, or whatever it's going to be, so that you don't have to feel those feelings. And this is a really gentle approach to helping you acknowledge those feelings, sit in them, so that you can move through them. Because I think we can all relate to that idea of not wanting to feel the discomfort. And, we do these things to distract ourselves, and that works in the short term. But then in the long term, all this stuff that we've been stuffing down is going to build up to a point where it's going to come out in some way. And nobody has time to deal with it then, right? Then you have to deal with it, because maybe your body is screaming at you, or emotionally you're just, having a meltdown, whatever the case may be. But this is a really gentle way of approaching it.
You said you had been dealing with anxiety leading up to this stage of your journey. What had you been attempting or trying to mitigate the symptoms that you were dealing with before you began using or searching for the coaching practice and then utilizing EFT?
Yeah. So I had been, in reflecting back on it, I had been going to yoga at that time, and now I can look back and say, oh yeah, I was really going to yoga at all these different times in my life where I was dealing with a lot of stress, and I didn't really realize that that's why I was like naturally going there. I think I was also doing some breathing exercises. I was very um, curious about meditating, but didn't really know too much about it, and breathing techniques. So I was always interested in those things. I think I just was always an anxious person. I was an anxious kid, but it was something that I was able to manage on my own until it got to a point where I couldn't, and that was really triggered by um, I'm a military spouse, and my husband was in the Navy, and he had gotten out, and he was in the reserves, and so I was living in this world where I did not think he was going to have to deploy. And then we got this news out of left field, which was very different from when he was active duty, and we knew when he was going to deploy, and there was lots of preparation and leading up to it. And this was very much like, this is happening, it's happening really soon, like no preparation. And this was also, we had kids at this point, and the other deployments we didn't have kids, and so it just kind of sent me over the edge. And I think, like a lot of people, when you feel that type of discomfort and these panic attacks, my first reaction was to go to the doctor and seek help. And the doctor's first reaction was to put me on meds, and I was willing to try anything at that point because I was so uncomfortable. And I did, but I really didn't like how it physically made me feel. And that was when I kind of made a deal with myself that I was going to do some of my own research and see if I could make any sort of headway on my own. And if I was still at the same point of struggle in a month, I would go back to the doctor and I would try something else. But luckily, I was able to make some changes on my own, and it's led me where I am.
Excellent.
That's so beautiful. It's very empowering and inspiring as well. I do think we need to take responsibility in a sense for our own health and well-being, because what's out there is not always the best for everyone, in terms of the Western medical model. What I love about what you said with the EFT, like feeling our feelings, can you speak to, and I also want to acknowledge how you mentioned the yoga, because I do find that throughout times in my life when I was going to yoga daily, maybe sometimes even doing it more than once a day, looking back, like that's when I was so stressed out. So while I love yoga so much, what EFT is really good at is identifying the feeling and not avoiding it and then working through it. And how do we even begin to identify feelings or emotions? How do we know the difference of them? Like, do we feel them? Is it a thought? How do you explain that with your clients, or how could you possibly explain it?
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about tapping is that it really meets you where you are. So some people come to me and they have a lot of awareness around, their emotions and what they're feeling, and they even have that intuition as to like where they're feeling it in their body. Other people do not, right? It's this idea of like, I'm really stressed, I'm really overwhelmed, and maybe I'm dealing with physical pain in the body, right? I'm getting really stressed out and I'm feeling all of this tension in my neck and in my shoulders, and I've tried all these other things. Nothing's really working. I don't know what to do. And so if there is some sort of physical thing that's going on in the body, that's typically where I would start, because a lot of the time, people tend to notice a difference in the physical sensations in their body more easily than it is to identify shifts with the emotional stuff. And so that's where we would start. And we would start by tapping about whatever it is that they're physically feeling in their body, whether it's pain or tightness, and then see where the thoughts come. Because like you mentioned, so much of this has to do with our thoughts. What are we thinking? Because our thoughts create our feelings, and our feelings create our actions, and our actions create our results. So, you know, sometimes people know what they're thinking and why that's leading to the stress, and sometimes they don't. So it's really this practice of just figuring that out along the way, and starting wherever they're ready to start, and that's simply using the words that they're using to describe their problem to me.
Yes, I love that, because everyone has almost like a different definition for a word or meaning. So what one word might mean, like stress could mean a lot of different things to different people. Anxiety could mean a lot of different things as well. Can you explain what a panic attack is? We often talk about anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and how it's not good. And what I mean by that is sometimes I'll have clients and they'll have panic attacks and they don't even realize that it's not a normal response. They're like, oh, wait, they black out, or so everybody has a little bit of a different response. But could you speak to the difference between anxiety attack and panic attack?
Yeah, I mean, I can like my personal experience is kind of what I can speak to, and I'm not, clinically, I'm not really sure if I could
Sure.
define, the difference between anxiety attack and panic attack. But I think what it's been for me is this idea of there's just so much going on in the mind, in the body. There seems to be a disconnect of what's going on, and then you can't handle anymore, and it's that fight, flight, or freeze that is going, that can show up in different people differently. um and and usually there's signs of it, right? Like sometimes it's like, oh, my heart is really starting to race, or I've had clients explain to me like they get this tingling sensation that starts to go down their arms, and that's a sign that they're going to have of this panic attack, where you feel like you are not in control. You feel like you don't have control of your body, you don't have control of your mind and your thoughts, and it can be a really scary place to be. Um and I think that the thing that I love about tapping is that it can be used proactively on a day-to-day basis as part of your regular self-care, but then it can also be used reactively in those moments where you're recognizing that something, these things are starting to happen, you're starting to feel a certain way. You can start tapping and doing some breathing, and it can be really helpful in the moment too.
Wow, thank you so much. This is very helpful, very enlightening. Is there a procedure in terms of duration, time of day, how often that I know everyone's going to be slightly different, but generally speaking?
Yeah. The best time to tap is when you make time to tap. Like there's no like right time of day or amount of time that you should tap. I will say that in a one-on-one session with clients, we schedule for an hour. But if you're tapping on your own, you can tap for a couple of minutes. The barrier that I get a lot is that I don't have time. I have all these things going on. When am I going to have time to do one more thing? And so the best way to start a new habit is to attach it to something that you already do. So I always tell people, if you're in the shower and you've got the shampoo in your hair, right? And you got to leave it in there for a couple minutes, do like a round of tapping, and that can be your tapping, just acknowledging how you're feeling right then and there in the moment. Because the thing is, the more that you practice on a regular basis, the more likely you're going to be to implement it when you really need it in those moments of stress and overwhelm.
So the location is really not a barrier. You if you're at work or the office, and you can step into a break room, or you can step outside for lunch. It doesn't have to be in a specific location. That's one of the pros of this, right? You don't have to go somewhere or go to a class necessarily. It moves with you, or
Exactly.
it's mobile, right, in a way. So I
Yeah,
think that
wherever you are.
actually should make it. Yeah, I mean, in the shower, like start your day off, end your day, whatever you need to do.
Yeah,
So
wherever you are. And sometimes I'll say, so there are, I don't know if you want me to walk through where all the points are, but there are
absolutely.
there are the typical points. So I'll just walk you through where those are. And then I like to say, or I like to compare this to acupuncture, because people are more familiar with acupuncture. So when you go to an acupuncturist, they take those tiny little needles and they put them in at certain points of the body. With tapping, we're applying acupressure to some of those same points. And so we start by tapping on the pinky side of the hand, and you can tap with either hand. I tend to tap with my right hand because I'm a righty, on the pinky side of the left hand. But you can, sometimes people say that they like to do both because they feel uneven if they don't do both. And this is where you do what's called the setup statement, acknowledging how you're feeling. And that goes like, even though I'm feeling really anxious, I love and accept myself. And then you go on to the other points, and we do what's called a reminder phrase, and we would tap on the top of the head. I'm feeling really anxious. And we go to the start of the eyebrows. I'm feeling really anxious. And you keep it simple. You can stay with the same words, the sides of the eyes. I'm feeling really anxious. We go under the eyes. I'm feeling really anxious. Under the nose, where the nose and the lip meet, kind of at that 90-degree mark. All of this anxiety. And then coming to the chin crease. I'm feeling so anxious. And we come to the collarbone. So there's like 2 points. If you come down the middle and over to each side, it's about the fleshy part underneath the collarbone. All of this anxiety. And then we go under the arm. So for women, it's about the center of the bra strap on the side of the body. And for men, it's about 2.5 inches down from the armpit. All of this anxiety. And then the last point is between the pinky finger and the ring finger on the back of the hand. All of this anxiety. And so you are tuning into the emotions. So sometimes people will ask, are we just like tapping in the bad stuff? We're just talking about how anxious I am. Like what's going on? And the idea is, no, we're not tapping in the bad stuff, but we are acknowledging how we are feeling in this moment, with the intention of organically and authentically moving that needle towards the better thought or feeling, and which is very different than, okay, just saying a positive affirmation. Because if you're feeling really angry, you could identify, I'm feeling really angry. And you could go to the opposite end of the spectrum and say, I'm really happy. Life is great, right? You could say that, but then there's a disconnect between what you're saying and how you're actually feeling, right? So with tapping, what we're doing is we're really acknowledging how we're feeling, and we're putting words to how we're feeling, with the intention of moving that needle towards the better thought or feeling. We might not get to, I'm so happy, life is grand, right? Like that might not be possible in one session, but it could be, I'm really angry, and I know I've been really angry before and I've gotten through it. Or I'm really angry and I have a community of friends and family I can talk to about this or support me through this, right? Like something that feels true to you. So the words that we use when we're tapping are very important, because it's important to be saying words that really resonate with how you are feeling. And then just one more thing I wanted to add is so in addition to those points that I just shared, there are points that are not part of the regular protocol. So the points that we went over are the regular protocol, and then when you're out in public and maybe you don't have the ability to step into a room and you don't want people looking at you, tapping on yourself, being like, what the heck is that guy doing? You can actually squeeze at the base of the fingers on any finger. So like the base of the nail on any finger on the sides of each. And you can just have your hands in your lap. You could have your hands under the desk, like in a meeting. If somebody's saying something that's triggering to you and you're just squeezing these fingers and taking some nice deep breaths, it's going to help to calm you and ground you.
Yeah, that's a wonderful tip. I do have a funny story. I was in a parking lot once and I was feeling emotional. I was crying and I'm tapping, and the guy comes up to my window. I'm like this, like tears are coming down, and he mouths, he's like, "Are you okay?" And so I'm tapping, crying, and I give him a thumbs up. So yes, I totally understand where you might not want to do that, at your office.
Yeah.
So that's a great tip. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah.
So you spoke to the feeling and how some people, I think in the new age era, it was all positive thinking and you don't want to reinforce negativity. How though does this help with manifestation?
Yeah. So I think it can really help, because if you have resistance towards whatever it is that you're trying to manifest, like, you want to have a six-figure business, but you have this feeling or thought or belief that that's not possible. I can't do that. It's important to acknowledge that and not just bypass it and say, I'm making six figure, like I can do it. If you don't believe it, if it doesn't feel true, there's going to be that disconnect with manifesting something. So it's really important to acknowledge all of that resistance that's coming up. And a lot of the time what happens is that there are memories that are associated with particular thoughts and feelings, maybe things that you haven't thought about in a really long time that make their way to the surface. And that's happening because there is some sort of connection with why you're feeling that way. And tapping can help to bring things that are in the subconscious up to the conscious so that you can explore them and move through them.
Yes, that's wonderfully explained. Thank you so much. I do understand to some extent that our emotions will often be stored in our body, right? In our tissue, in our organs. And so this is a beautiful way to release that so we can make more space, right? We
Right.
need to let go of the old, make more space so we can bring in the new. So thank you. That was like, oh, perfect.
There's another part of the body connection that, maybe aside from the insider's perspective of it, as opposed to like an affirmation, more of like an emotional, words, thoughts. But with the added element of the touch, can you talk about, there's a connection. You almost feel like, even when I was just following along with you, you feel some kind of way right away. And it kind of strengthens what you're thinking about, right? Because now, especially to those that are kind of uninitiated and may have a hard time even staying with the affirmation or mantra, something they're trying to repeat that's in their head, that can be a difficult task, but this makes it easier. You have something going along with that new thought. Does that make sense? As far as you remember it strengthens what you're trying to do with the tapping. I really like that, how that brings the mind body together. One of the things we always talk about, mind body spirit here, and it brings the body, and it's like more resounding when you're doing that action, and then you almost remember it after I was done. I'm thinking back to what I had just done, whereas maybe if I had said an affirmation or something, it would be fleeting, and then I would be on to the next, thinking of a whole bunch of other things. But I can even think how I felt when I was doing that with my fingers, and then, yeah, why was I doing that? Because I was working through some kind of feeling of stress that I had. So you can speak about the mind body connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think there is something to the somatic practice of this, of actually
That's what I
tapping
was looking for. Yeah.
on the points
It's
as you're
grounding.
acknowledging how you're feeling. I think what I've found in working with people that have said that they've struggled with meditating, or they can't meditate, that this is a practice that can help to almost clear out some of that monkey mind, all the thoughts that are going on before you go into a meditation. And I do think that this practice in general really helpful in cultivating that relationship between the body and the mind. I've worked with clients that have really struggled with making a connection between an emotion and a physical sensation. And I do feel like the practice of tapping on it, I don't know, it helps you to tune into it, and you can begin to recognize when, you're thinking about something. Oh, I am noticing that I'm feeling this type of sensation in this part of my body. I'm curious about that. I wonder what that means. When I think I often talk about my first experience with tapping in a one-on-one session, and how, like I said, I was dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety, but for me, that was manifesting physically with my TMJ, and I was having a lot of pain in my jaw, and there would be mornings where my jaw would be locked up, and I would just go into the shower and hope that the hot water would, unlock my jaw. And so when I had learned that this was a practice that could not only help with anxiety, but also could help alleviate physical pain, I was, again, skeptical, but I'm willing to try anything. And so in the session, the practitioner is just asking a lot of questions about, how does it make me feel that I'm dealing with this physical pain? And I'm talking about how I'm frustrated. And so we're using those words of how I'm so frustrated. And then I'm realizing, oh, it's more than frustration. I'm really angry. So then I'm tapping and, repeating after her about what she's reflecting back to me, the things that I was saying about how I'm feeling really, really angry. And then I felt this feeling of betrayal come up, and the betrayal was because when I got my wisdom teeth out, the dentist had dislocated my jaw to get my wisdom teeth out. I wasn't expecting that. I felt betrayed by this, and then I had this unrelated thought of another time in my life where I was betrayed by a friend, and I never would have put those things together because it was a completely different time in my life. And then by the end of the session, she asked me to check back in with the pain. And at the beginning, I had rated it on a scale of 1 to 10 that I was at an 8 that day. The pain was pretty intense. And by the end of that session, it was all the way down to a 2, when I had been doing all sorts of things to try and mitigate that pain and nothing was working. And so it became abundantly clear, oh, wow, all of this tension that I'm feeling in my jaw is anger and resentment and betrayal. And I never would have, put 2 and 2 together. And so I think this is a practice that helps us recognize things like that. And when there's that light of awareness that we shine on it, there's a release that happens.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm glad that you were able to alleviate that pain. Would you say that, or have you ever had a client?
And hopefully you stopped going. You did not go back to that dentist.
No, I did not.
Okay.
Would you say that
Forgave him, but find somewhere else, right? We forgave him, but we want somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yes, but I love it. I love how you mentioned it was like seemingly not connected, but a lot of times they are really interconnected. So, you kind of go down the line and be like, oh, maybe that also is connected to that. Do you ever have clients that are told maybe by a doctor that like, all right, you have this back pain, you're always going to have this back pain, you're just going to have to deal with it, and then discover, similarly maybe to you, that there could be some sort of emotion tied to it?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's interesting because it's interesting what our minds do. We believe what the doctors are saying, and then that can impact us physically. And so I was invited to speak at a fibromyalgia support group, and so I was invited in by the woman who organizes the group. No, I don't think any of them had any knowledge of tapping before I came in. So there was definitely some people that were very skeptical in this group. And when I do my talks, I'll ask for a volunteer, and we'll just like tap on the spot on whatever it is that they're dealing with. And this woman was dealing with intense pain in her knees, and she just thought, well, I have fibromyalgia. I've got this knee pain. That's just how it is, And so we started tapping about, similarly to my jaw, like how does it make you feel that you have this pain? How long have you been dealing with it? Are there any benefits for you being in this pain, which is a sticky question. And she really paused and thought about it and talked about how, because she was in this pain, her kids were coming to visit and check on her more often. And so that opened another door for us to go down. Like, is there a fear of, of change in relationship? If you're physically feeling better, are you afraid that your kids aren't going to come over? Right. It had us go down this whole other way. And by the end of it, she was like, the pain in my knees is going away. What's happening? And we're like tapping, like, I don't know what's happening right now. It's like it was really, really cool for me as a practitioner to see that shift happening so quickly, because there was obviously some connection with fear that was going on, that manifesting itself in the knees. So yeah, it's amazing how pain can show up in the body, and we can just be like, well, this is how it is. Like, I was in an accident, I broke a bone. Every time it rains, I'm going to deal with this pain. Or every time I do go want to play tennis, I'm going to be held out. Whatever the thoughts that we're having really do impact the physical body.
Yeah, it almost is like that saying, the devil we know, that we get used to the predictability of knowing we're going to be in pain, almost attached to it. If some of the people don't know who they are without that pain, without that struggle, or that emotional dysregulation, we call it, I think, similarly, secondary gain. It is sometimes a challenging thing to bring up, because obviously we're not shaming anybody. I don't think anyone, chooses to suffer per se. But I think you're bringing awareness to these people, and that in a way maybe they wouldn't have otherwise found out. So that is wonderful. Thank you for the work that you do, because I do, having my own issues with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, there's a lot of stuff out there that's maybe not in alignment with what people actually really need. What would you say, where would you tell somebody to begin, if they wanted to start going down this path, working with you? What's the first step that they might take?
Yeah. Well, with anything, right? I always encourage people, if you have any sort of soul nudge or inkling that you want to explore, whether it's this tapping or whether it's going to a yoga class or a sound bath or whatever it is, give yourself that gift and go try it. Whether that be, if you want to start simple, you can go on YouTube and do a tap along video. There's lots of tapping videos, and I make a tapping video every week that I send out to my email list. But I will say this: if you are tapping along with a practitioner in a video and the words that they are using really aren't resonating with how you're feeling, pause it and try to tune in and put some words to how you are feeling, because it's going to be much more effective if you're tapping and saying whatever is true to you. You could start there. I do have a free masterclass on my website, and in that masterclass we talk more about the science of what's going on in the body and how this is making changes in the brain and why it's working, a little bit more behind the why of how it's working. And you can access that by going to mindshiftwithlauren.com/masterclass. I also have a free tapping group that I offer the first Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. Eastern. I market it towards entrepreneurs because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. However, it's open to everyone. So it's a great opportunity for you to tap with a group of people. There's a really beautiful energy that happens when somebody is sharing in a group what they're dealing with. And more times than not, more than one person in that group can relate to whatever it is that's being shared. So you can access that or sign up for that by visiting mindshiftwithlauren /tap-into-success. And yeah, those are a few ways you could get started.
Wonderful.
That's excellent. One of the things that I had wanted to hit on before we wrap, and one of the challenges that I try to think about the people that maybe aren't as exposed, come from their perspective. One of the things, if you think about chronic fatigue, you mentioned the back. I think headaches. That's just the huge one, right? With migraines and stress headaches and things like that. Is isolating those triggers. You had mentioned triggers earlier. What's causing it, right? So there's a variety of different externals and different emotions and different kind of low negative energies, right, that may cause these things to start when they're not with you and they're not really locked in. They had a bunch of other things going on, and then that happens. What do you recommend before the next time they can get to a session, or the next time they can really be isolated and lock into tapping away from the other external factors that may have caused this? Is it putting it in your phone real quick or noting it? I mean, does that help, kind of logging what's happening so you can develop, oh, this is a pattern? I always wonder, they go have a great session and then life happens, right? The 9 to 5, you get home and it's like, my back hurts, but what caused it to start happening? Oh, let me go through the 9 hours of the day. Especially people when they're first starting out, they don't exactly know what's causing it. So is there something, that a tool or a practice or some recommendation that you have so that they can figure out, maybe pinpoint it more so you can tap more effectively?
Yeah. So with tapping, you can always start globally, right? So we might not
Okay.
know what the cause is, and we may not ever get to the root of what really the cause. Sometimes we get there, but not always. But you can start with, okay, I have this back pain. Well, how does having that back pain make you feel right now? Is it making you feel really frustrated? Are you really angry that you're having to deal with this? Is it just really overwhelming? Trying to identify, like, what is it bringing up in me right this moment, and tapping on this, like, I have this back pain and I'm really angry about it. I'm so angry. I have to deal with it. I've been dealing with it for so long, or maybe it's, there's lots of different nuanced ways of tapping. You can do what we call tapping and talking. So it's as if you are picking up the phone and talking to a friend about it, and like, you're like, I'm so angry, I'm having to deal with this. I've been dealing with it for years, and the doctors don't know what's wrong, and I'm so frustrated with the doctors. And wherever the mind goes, and as you go round by round, noticing if there's any other thoughts that are coming up, or if there's any shift in the pain. As specifically with physical pain in the body, what we notice a lot of the time is that pain can move. So if it starts maybe on one side of the back, you're like, oh, I'm feeling it on the opposite side now. That's odd, right? And you're like, okay, this pain is moving. We call that chasing the pain. And from my experience in working with people, when that pain starts to move like that, that is a clear indicator that there's an emotional component to that pain. So we just keep following it. Now it's on the right side of my body. What is this trying to tell me? If this pain could talk, what would it say to me? So there's lots of things that working with a practitioner can be really helpful, because you've got this outside set of eyes, this outside perspective that's going to help ask you questions that you might not naturally be thinking of yourself. And if you, I think in my experience, when I had my first session, it was like, when I had this thought of this friend that betrayed me, in my mind, I'm like, that's not related to what's going on. And I don't know if I would have naturally said anything, but she saw a look on my face and she was like, looks like you're thinking about something. What's coming up? And I shared it. So like, having somebody who can kind of be like, that looks like something's going on, like, tell me about that, can help you kind of get out of your own head and make some headway. But it's always just about starting wherever you are.
Yeah,
Thank you
it's
so much.
amazing with how the pain can jump around. Like, that's how wonderful our mind and body is, in the sense of protection. It's like, no, we don't want to feel that. We don't want to feel that. Like, let's make it move somewhere else. So I actually worked with someone, and that had, like, she had like a pocket of emotion in her like lower stomach, and that's where she's like, I know that's where I keep all of my unprocessed emotions. And so like she literally would go into it when we were working together. So it can come in all shapes and forms. Thank you for explaining that. Two questions. One, what would be one of your favorite books that helped you along your path, either maybe when you were transitioning into this world, or just something that was really inspiring to you that you go back to often, or will always be a part of your journey? And then also, if you could talk about the sound bath a
Yeah,
bit.
sure. So One of my favorite books, which isn't really necessarily directly related to tapping, but is Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. And I think it's fascinating which was written by, he's a hypnotherapist,
Yeah.
and how he didn't believe in past lives, and then naturally these people were going into past lives to heal things that were happening in their present day life, and how sometimes that can be physical pain that you brought on from these past lives. All of that just was like so intriguing to me, and I I just like spiritually, it really opened my mind up to a lot, and so much of it resonated with me that I have been able to take from that and incorporate into the work that I do. So I would say that book, and then sound healing. My first experience with a sound bath was at my local yoga studio, and it was an out of body experience, and I think that it's another modality that helps energy move, and the vibration of the bowls sync up with the vibration of your body, and it helps to get stuff flowing again. And it just feels so good, and so that's what it's about. It's just following the things that feel good. And so from that first day, I was like, oh, like she played this one particular bowl. It was a crystal alchemy singing bowl that was mixed with kyanite, and kyanite is a crystal that helps you connect with your higher self. And I was like, well, I need that, like that, but I don't know what that is, but that just made me feel so good. So I went and I bought one of those bowls, and that's how I started, because I was like, I need that in my life. I need to play this thing. Um, but yeah, and like, sometimes I incorporate that in with a yin yoga class. Sometimes I incorporate tapping in with a yin yoga class. So I think all of these modalities can complement each other, and help you move the junk. Like, you got to feel it to heal it, move all that stuff out, like you were talking about earlier, to create the space so that you can call in how you want to feel.
Yeah, I love that. And it's also, yeah, it's enjoyable. It should be enjoyable too, right? So you have sometimes like the emotional stuff, but then you go to, yin yoga and sound bath, and it's like, oh, this is why I'm doing all this, right? So I could find, peace in my heart
Yeah.
and
And
expand.
And I mean, you're right. Like, so, it should feel good, right? But there are times I've gone to sound baths where, and it's interesting, like the different instruments. Where I was, right, where my mat was right underneath one of those really big gongs, and this, I don't know what but the sound of that gong, like that, really stirred up. It made me, it makes me think of the client you were talking about that had the pocket of all this emotion there. Like, it stirred up something deep in my stomach, where I felt a lot of intense, like, anger and frustration. So I mean, the sound can do that too, so just putting that out there, because if there is somebody that goes and they feel discomfort with it and they think they're supposed to feel good, it doesn't feel good every time. I think it depends on the instruments. I think it depends on where you are in your life, but I think it gives you all of these modalities give you what you need in that moment. Our bodies are so innately wise, and when we use these different tools, it helps to bring out and move what needs to move.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, good is relative for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, release to me is often good, or when I think of the long term impact, that's good. It's like progress. It's like you said, moving the energy. As above, so below, it can be also, relative, but I think of it as like the energy field and the physical body, right? So if you're working on your physical body, you're going to be changing your energy field and vice versa. So I love, playing around and dabbling in all these cool, amazing modalities.
Me too.
Well, thank you very much. We have been listening to and learning a lot from Lauren Fonvielle. We'll link your website where people can get that free master class. I'm learning a lot more. Link up with you, hopefully, to get started on that journey to emotional freedom and physical well-being, no matter what they have going on, no matter what pain they're dealing with, and also your socials as well. So thank you to everyone watching and listening. Definitely love when we get someone who can give us really practical, actionable advice that so many people can benefit from. So really appreciate it, Lauren. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank you for
thank
having
you.
me.
Thank you for the work the inner work you do and sharing with everyone. Humanity needs you right now. So thank you.
Thank you both so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Journey to Your Best Self podcast. We appreciate you being part of this community. For more resources, insights, and ways to connect, head over to youroneself.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, including Apple, Spotify, and Overcast. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, keep aligning your mind, body, and spirit, and peace, love, and self-discovery.